Well, hi, and welcome to this video with SRK, which is part of Mining Journal, miningnews.net, and Mining Magazine's annual ESG report. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Nikolai Kirillov. Nikolai is a senior consultant, environmental specialist for SRK Consulting, which is a resource consultancy which provides expert advice for every stage of the mining project lifecycle. Nikolai is here primarily to talk to us about complexities of mine closure, and specifically the importance of integrating mine closure strategies throughout the early design and operational planning stages. He's also going to be kind enough to cover future mine closure liabilities and how to avoid them, of course, and most importantly of all, how to effectively estimate costs for the end of life of a project. So Nikolai, welcome. And to kick things off, maybe you can tell us a little bit about SRK Consulting in general and the sorts of services the company provides.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, or evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. With pleasure. SRK Consulting is a global consultancy, and we work predominantly in the areas of mining services and also water resource industries. We're fairly big for a company. We're about 1,700 or more employees worldwide, 50 years in existence. This year actually is our 50-year anniversary, so we're happy about that for the history of our company. And currently we have 40 plus offices worldwide. So as you noted, we do everything from exploration to mine closure and post-closure. So basically we're working in the areas of exploration, resource estimation, various types of technical studies, scoping, PFS, FS. We do work such as DD on mining projects and lots of other things. And we are keeping up with the industry's demands and continually improving our services.
Well, happy 50th anniversary. And today, of course, we've asked you here to talk primarily about a specific area of your expertise at SRK Consulting, which is mine closure. Let's start off with the concept of mine closure and when it really started to perhaps move to the forefront of the general ESG narrative.
Yes, well, I see mine closure as an integrated part of the project lifecycle because naturally the resources of any deposit are finite. What's very interesting about closure that many companies don't look at it at the early stage. So we try to do the opposite for our clients because it's very important to see the project in the complete lifecycle. Responsible closure is actually to consider it is an integral part of the project lifecycle, and we have to, during project planning process, consider outcomes of all stakeholders. And this process hasn't started easy. The first appearance of mine closure requirements, I would say it was 1969, when British Columbia has introduced its Mining Act, which has stipulated some of the requirements for the mine closure. And since then, there's been a gradual increase in number of regulations, number of jurisdictions who have implemented requirements for closure. And then I would say that approximately in 1990, where there was no word ESG yet, there was a big burst in a number of countries developing their own guidelines or updating their, for example, mining legislation to include the requirements for closure, because jurisdictions have started to understand a legacy which improper closure leaves for the state to manage. And this is something which would require big impact on, say, stakeholders, such as local communities. At the same time, there are taxpayers who would be ultimately paying for the closure implemented by the government, and many other stakeholders. I think we're going to speak about it later. So I would say 1969, the ultimate start, and then we see gradual improvement. And currently, almost any mining jurisdictions has a dedicated legislation.
Sure. And now, as you say, it has become more sophisticated in the mining industry. as a whole is more aware of the importance of mine closure and building that into planning processes. To what extent would you say are companies implementing formal strategies to optimize that process? And who, if anybody, holds them accountable for that?
It really depends on the company and its maturity. For example, ICMM has very nice maturity framework for mine closure, which we often use to assess our clients and help them understand where they are. So basically, it really depends on the size of the company. For example, the majors, big international companies have often internal project development standards where closure is just a must. On all stages of the project development, the majors consider closure aspects from scoping study to PFS to feasibility studies, and they ultimately understand the closure issues because like any project development is the iterative process. So basically closure issues are not just set in a project, they've been iteratively reviewed and optimized to achieve the best outcome for the mining projects. So basically, this is what big companies do. Smaller ones, usually less advanced in integrating mine closure into their projects, but still under a pressure of a lot of requirements internationally. For example, if a project has international finance, most probably the finance comes with obligations on high ESG standards. And in this way, company will have to, maybe first time in their expertise, first time in their for their projects, they will have to be looking at what closure is, what are the risks, and what are the demands of the stakeholders for the projects. And this is a very interesting dynamics because it is very, well, personally for me, very interesting for me to see how companies which are first time coming across such requirements, looking into it. And I must say that there is a lot of interest in this aspect because companies start to understand that this is a very, very complicated process. And the earlier it is addressed, the better it is.
That makes sense. But as that accountability has grown in stature, and we've seen a lot of documentation and guidelines as to how to promote ESG standards in the critical mineral sector, for example, to what extent does that impact investment in mining projects worldwide? Does it act as a deterrent or a positive because you address the elephant on the table up front?
Again, I speak a lot saying the word integral, but it's integral to ESG standards because like critical minerals is a very hot topic at the moment, and there is a lot of international partnership happening in this area. And well, I would note that, for example, the Mineral Security Partnership led by United States and which involves also a number of other countries worldwide, they don't just invest in mining projects. They have developed dedicated, fairly rigorous ESG set of ESG standards, and they really try to support only those projects which meet high in international recognized ESG standards. And the main reason why it's happening is, like, in my opinion, that some companies who are looking for quick money, non-responsible companies, like they're aiming for reckless exploitation of the mineral deposits and putting aside a number of sustainability, human rights risks, including mine closure. Because, and I'm saying that mine closure because it's an expensive thing to do. And when companies chasing for a quick money, it's basically not what they're wishing to complete project with.
The ones who think about ROI, return on investment, above everything else.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and we've talked about the growing importance of mine closure, and you've described that very well. And I think you've already touched on this, but I was going to say, at what point in the planning process should companies be thinking about successful mine closure? It sounds early as possible, and
absolutely. Well, basically, concept should be developed at the very early stage, such as, for example, scoping study or even exploration. And the scoping stage, you usually have an idea of how could the stakeholders be affected if a mining project is here. And what's good is that scoping stage as well as the pre-feasibility stage are the stages where you can have and you can assess a big number of closure options. So basically, this is the stage where you iteratively develop a design, you develop closure for this design, you see what could be done better, return back to the design and improve it for closure. And in SRK, we often use a concept, we say design for closure, because sometimes a closure not thought about early can lead to liabilities which will not be settled in the nearest future. And I'm sure that no project owner wants to end up with an option like that. For example, like requirement for treating mine water for perpetuity. Like it's the worst outcome, and the walk-away solution, if it's possible, it is basically developed at the stage of pre-feasibility or feasibility. This is what we are always aiming for.
Absolutely. And we know that mine closure touches on so many other aspects: environmental impacts, sustainability, the whole governance framework of a project, legal aspects, environmental rehabilitation, social impacts, probably a lot more we could name as well. But what would you deem to be the most challenging technical aspects of mine closure, or possibly the ones that are most often overlooked?
From my experience, there's multiple areas where sometimes companies lack technical expertise, or it's not considered serious for a project, but it may well be very important. And well, returning to the previous question, I would say that closure options, taking them seriously, not a formal exercise, because like a legal requirement says that you have to do that. You have to assess closure options before you submit, for example, a project for approval. And we often see, for example, in projects in Central Asia, where I'm working in, is like a closure option is like to backfill pit or do not backfill the pit. So where the question is obvious, well, where the answer is obvious that you don't backfill it because it's basically may kill the economics of the projects. So it's a very formal approach to closure options. But the closure options is the stage where you design for closure. Like, for example, tailings storage facility, one of the most difficult for closing, have a number of opportunities. For example, sequential development of the cells, ability to improve water management during the closure stage, so that the geotechnical stability of TSF is much better and more rigorous. The other thing is, which is not considered often a serious one, is progressive closure. Because if a project has high liabilities, it's best for example, investor, that the liabilities are managed at the lowest possible level. And we often hear that closure planning is actually liabilities planning and liabilities management. So you manage liability by progressive closure. And when there are no clear options like how to do the closure progressively, it's most often the case where there is not enough expertise to do so. Another one is probably non-proven technical design. It means that in closure planning, the actual planner sets a number of assumptions which are not realistic. Like, for example, this facility, this waste rock dump is going to be stable no matter what. And we're just gonna do the simple closure actions and walk away. It doesn't always work that way, because it's related not only to physical stability, but like, for example, geochemical stability, which is an issue for mine waste anyways. And if it's not looked through in detail, it can lead to, for that example I gave before, perpetual water management, water treatment, because the acidic mine drainage is going to be there forever compared to human lifespan. Reestablishment of ecosystems, you don't just seed the area and walk away. It might not be sufficient, and it often impacts the number of years for the post-closure when maintenance and monitoring will be required, and the appropriate costs are in the closure plan. And the other one is like a lot of closure projects, I would say, as depend on three main things, as my colleagues say. First one is water, second one is water, and third one is water as well, because it's one of the most significant forces which can deteriorate your mine closure design. And considering that climate change is basically inevitable and we're seeing it everywhere, we have to account for this, including the mine closure aspects. So water management is quite important. Consider climate change. It is still yet quite a new topic. So this is where we like work on our closure projects a lot. So we basically look at what's going to be happening to a mine site future.
And one of the challenges here, Nikolai, of course, is all of these things have a cost attached, and the CFOs are going to be keeping a very careful eye on those costs. You know, obviously, you can't always mitigate the cost, but what about estimating closure costs and being able to monitor and track as a best practice for maximum efficiency?
Oh, yeah. Ultimately, everything we do with mine closure planning leads to the closure cost estimates. And well, I'm not going to be speaking about the closure cost types, like, for example, for financial guarantee, for project evaluation, or any other requirements. The key elements of closure planning, especially on the early stages of the project, is information that you have for the estimate. So basically, your closure cost estimate is only as good as the input information. If you have a non-proven technical design and you're saying, oh no, it's going to be fine, no problem, your cost could be like orders of magnitude of the reality. Good information which comes into the cost estimator is basically vital. And as long as the closure project is being updated during the life of mine of mining operation, the number of assumptions which can lead to non-proven design or mislead with wrong assumptions has to be reduced gradually. So basically, you have to review the input information quite often, look at the input information, and make your closure design, technical design, as good as possible by reducing number of assumptions. And well, one of the other things which I often find difficult is like physical closure is fairly straightforward, having enough expertise, but the social aspects of closure are often unexpected thing coming up in the closure cost model. For example, if you have to post-closure relocate a number of people who were dependent on the mine, it's a significant and often unexpected cost. So this is something which has to be thought quite early in the project. And yeah, the other problem is with cost estimation is that you're looking into years into the future. So this is by nature a very difficult process, but again, the more often you review your closure cost model and the assumptions you're making regarding, for example, unit rates, the better the estimate is going to be. One of the things we often see, for example, when doing a due diligence on closure projects, is companies generally using the simple approach of unit rates and scope of work, but the unit rates are not auditable or not very reliable. So this is one of the obstacles to a project evaluation, when closure costs are not seeming to be as reliable as they should be, and you basically say that this shouldn't be right, because like this closure plan and cost estimate was developed 5 years ago and never updated since. So yeah, and I would just say that in SRK we have often using the SRC model. This is a Excel-based software that we were developing for the closure cost modeling, and its advantages, and it's technically what should be done for good closure cost estimate, is that it is very auditable, defensible, calculator of mine closure costs, and it's used worldwide for various purposes, including financial assurances. So basically, have a good input data with proven technical design, have proper set of assumptions and reduce the number of them during the life of mine. And the thing is, to summarize, is like, do pay attention to mine closure and mine closure cost. It is very important, and the more seriously you're taking this, the more responsible you are as a mining company, and it's basically do the thing in the right way, because there's a huge body of knowledge on mine closure. It is doable.
Nobody wants surprises, Nikolai. Nikolai, we've run out of time. I know we could spend a lot more time talking about this often neglected area, and you've done a great job in marking everybody's cards and explaining this huge area. Nikolai Kirillov, SRK Consulting, thank you so much for your time. And
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
My pleasure.